James Butts Shills, how he promotes violence, bigotry, and violations of civil rights in Inglewood City Council meetings. Now, this documentary contains many facts and video clips with several people, so I want to make sure that the purpose of the documentary is clear. We will show that 1. As chairman of the Inglewood City Council, Mayor James Butts promotes violence, bigotry, and violations of civil rights in city council meetings. He does this by unethically and illegally abusing his power as chairman and allowing his political shills to use loud, abusive, bigoted, and even illegally threatening language designed to intimidate his critics. And in doing so, Butts emboldens his shills to limit people's civil rights with acts which are more and more violent and bigoted. And second, that James Butts is the worst kind of hypocrite, who will actually promote bigotry and racial division one day in order to attack a critic, but then the very next week try to distance himself from that exact same bigotry and racial division. In a June 17, 2014 Inglewood City Council meeting, one of Mayor James Butts' supporters, who was reportedly unemployed and, as we see here, liked to stand on the corner near the forum and direct traffic, stepped up to the microphone during the public comments portion of the meeting and openly threatened a critic of the mayor with violence and threatened to violate their civil rights by keeping them out of a council meeting by force. And even though James Butts is famous for interrupting speakers who he disagrees with, at no time during the man's comments did James Butts stop the man from making blatant threats of violence in a city council meeting. Now, it's important to remember that James Butts doesn't have the luxury of choosing what constitutional rights he does or doesn't enforce as mayor, because he swore a solemn oath to support and defend the United States Constitution. Unfortunately, as we'll see, that solemn oath means nothing to James Butts, because he has violated it countless times. And that includes when Butts sat quietly in a city council meeting and allowed this man to publicly threaten to use violence to violate another citizen's free speech, to violate another citizen's constitutional right to attend a city council meeting. True, Butts probably couldn't have stopped the man from making that particular threat, but this man had a history of making bigoted and threatening comments. So because the rules of decorum for council meetings state that you can be ejected for making such comments, Butts could have done so. Or he could have condemned the man's comments or even warned him not to do it again. But he didn't. And he didn't because the man was a supporter of his. And the reason James Butts allows this is because Butts is desperate for people to defend him in city council meetings. Other than the occasional citizen who drops by to express gratitude for some city service they received or their support for some program or action the mayor is proposing, the fact is that the vast majority of people who consistently support James Butts in meetings are either getting paid by the city, want to get paid by the city, have a position with the city, want a position with the city, have possible mental issues, or a combination of all of these. And James Butts depends on this handful of individuals, his shills, to defend him and attack his critics in council meetings. James Butts' team of shills, including this man, Willie Brown, are pretty easy to spot. They usually sit in the first 2 or 3 rows in meetings, and they act different, including defending Butts no matter how dishonest, rude, or illegal something is that he's done or said. Let's look at 5 of the biggest offenders when it comes to being James Butts' shills and political flunkies, and see what exactly they get out of it. Now, just to be perfectly clear, this segment is not meant to criticize any resident who has a limited knowledge of James Butts' history and conduct. It is perfectly reasonable that people that only see James Butts rubbing elbows with musicians, basketball players, celebrities, politicians, and religious leaders, or giving awards to students or giving away turkeys or whatever, would think he's not a bad person. In those photo opportunities, you don't see how James Butts blatantly lies, intimidates, violates the rules, laws, and civil rights in meetings. No, we're going to talk about people who have repeatedly seen all that, but still defend him because they get something out of it. Willie Brown is by far James Butts' biggest shill. That's because he owns a free newspaper, Inglewood Today News. So he has the ability to tell the public whatever James Butts wants him to tell them, and hide from the public whatever James Butts wants him to hide. And he has an understanding with the council that as long as they keep paying him hundreds or thousands of dollars a month to put the city's legal notices in the paper, he will print lots of nice stories about them in his paper, print nothing bad about them in his paper, and attack their critics in his paper. James Butts and the council basically use Inglewood's tax dollars to pay Willie Brown to be their personal publicist. And the fact that James Butts and the council were using Inglewood's tax dollars to pay Willie Brown to print whatever Butts and the council wanted did not go unnoticed by members of the public who were paying attention, especially when Butts, trying to create a council of yes men, bankrolled 2 city council candidates in 2013 to replace the 2 that he didn't exactly get along with.
If you get the 5 majority vote that you want, the Inglewood Today will have a field day as they will print whatever they want and they'll be rolling in money to the taxpayers.
And if anyone is unclear on why it's bad for a mayor to control what is printed about him and his city in a free newspaper, this clip from the John Oliver Show describes how the recent and significant decrease of journalists covering local politics makes fertile ground for public corruption.
And that's not good, because while there are some great web outlets, some of which do cover local government, there aren't nearly enough to replace what has been lost. Just listen to David Simon, who before creating the TV show The Wire, worked for years at the Baltimore Sun.
The day I run into a Huffington Post reporter at a Baltimore zoning board hearing is the day that I will be confident that we've actually reached some sort of equilibrium. You know, there's no glory in that kind of journalism, but that is the bedrock of what keeps, the next 10 or 15 years in this country are going to be a halcyon era for state and local political corruption. It is going to be one of the great times to be a corrupt politician. It is going to be one of the great times to be a corrupt politician, to be a corrupt politician, a corrupt politician, a corrupt politician, a corrupt politician.
The politics, and especially the city council meetings in Inglewood, are rarely covered by the more reputable papers in Los Angeles. So, Willie Brown's paper was James Butts' personal propaganda machine. He was the star, on the paper's front page more than any other human being, even more than the president. And because Inglewood City Clerk Yvonne Horton is technically the person who decides who gets the city's business for publishing its ads and legal notices, guess who gets her own little ad, free of charge, in Brown's weekly papers? But the hundreds of thousands of dollars Inglewood City Council had given Willie Brown over the years not only obligated Brown to promote Butts and the council in his paper, but also to protect Butts and the council with his paper. And the way Brown does that is by lying to his readers and maintaining a firm policy with all of his employees to never, ever, ever write or print anything bad about James Butts or his allies, no matter how important or bad it is. It is an absolute fact that if you were to walk up to Willie Brown and hand him a document from, say, the district attorney's office that said that the DA had investigated Butts and found out that he had repeatedly violated state law and civil rights, Willie Brown would never print anything about it. How do I know? Because I did it. In 2013, the LA County DA investigated how James Butts illegally ejects from meetings those who say things that he doesn't like. The DA's Bureau of Fraud and Corruption Prosecutions investigated, and in November of 2013, the DA found that Butts clearly and unambiguously violated state law, the Brown Act, and civil rights involving free speech in city council meetings. Also, as much as James Butts brags about his running the Inglewood Police Department before going to Santa Monica PD, Willie Brown never points out that Butts left Inglewood in 1991 with the highest violent crime rate in the city's history. A crime rate which, not coincidentally, started going down only about a year after someone else started running the police department. And when he was chief in Santa Monica, he became infamous because he and others were personally sued for systematically violating the law and the civil rights of countless citizens in Santa Monica. Butts and the other defendants asked the court to give them immunity from being sued because they were police officers, but the court repeatedly denied their request. Butts even asked the United States Supreme Court to come to his rescue, but even the Supreme Court denied him again. And this forced Police Chief Butts to give up the illegal and unconstitutional policies that he had approved, which taught their officers to violate citizens' civil rights. And when James Butts became mayor and regularly demonstrated angry, bullying behaviors towards some residents, and even towards some council members, behaviors completely inappropriate for a mayor, Willie Brown never brought up the fact that 20 years earlier, both James Butts' daughter and wife at the time had reported to law enforcement that Butts had choked his wife into unconsciousness, forcing his daughter to call 911 on her own father, and that a psychologist who evaluated his daughter was concerned about Butts physically abusing his daughter. No, Willie Brown kept James Butts' violent past a secret. And as many times as Willie Brown has been given facts about these stories, he has never done a story on any of them. But Willie Brown isn't just good for hiding illegal or unethical things James Butts did 2 years ago or even 20 years ago. He will also hide things, very important things, that are going on that very moment, that just about everybody else is writing stories about. Not only did Willie Brown not report James Butts inflicting violence on his family, but Brown never reported on how James Butts' domestic violence might have led to one of the victims of that violence, his daughter, to become so psychologically scarred from Butts' abuse that she herself became comfortable inflicting physical abuse on others. By ignoring a major news story being reported on by all the reputable TV and print media, Willie Brown again proved his deliberate pattern of hiding stories from the public that were embarrassing to James Butts.
Now at 5, a man pleaded not guilty today to conspiring with the daughter of a local mayor to attack her landlord. Israel Rios and Ashley Melissa Butts are the two accused in the crime. Eyewitness News reporter Mady Gomez spoke with the alleged victim about what happened.
This victim, who does not want his face shown or name used, is looking for justice. He says his ex-tenant, Ashley Melissa Butts, daughter of Inglewood Mayor James Butts, arranged for a man to attack him at his home back in April. The victim says after the man beat him with a baseball bat, he shot him but missed. He says he was suspicious of Butts from the beginning. 30-year-old Ashley Melissa Butts and 37-year-old Israel Rios have been charged with assault and conspiracy to commit a crime. According to the criminal complaint, Butts instructed Rios to go to the home and attack the victim in exchange for cash. We contacted Mayor James Butts for comment and have not heard back. We contacted Mayor James Butts for comment and have not heard back.
And Willie Brown doesn't just go to sleep during the big, negative, and current stories about James Butts' family. He goes into a coma when the stories are about Butts himself. This was made obvious in the beginning of 2015 when Butts and the council made the horrific mistake of filing a doomed copyright lawsuit against a critic of James Butts to try to intimidate him into removing 6 videos, like the one you're watching now, from the internet, and to force him to never make any similar videos again. Butts and the council claimed that the videos, which used portions of the city's official meeting videos, were violating a copyright on the city's videos, even though the city's videos were created with tax dollars, so they were obviously public records which could not be copyrighted. For 7 months, people of all different races, religions, genders, and political leanings, from many TV, news, and other organizations, reported on and or outright condemned the attack on free speech that James Butts and his council were waging.
Now the First Amendment Coalition, a national free speech group, has jumped into the debate as well. The executive director of the group wrote, "How could Inglewood officials and their lawyers possibly have concluded that suing one of their more outspoken critics in hopes of unplugging his unflattering videos was an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars? This is America, not Iran. The only reasonable conclusion is that this lawsuit was cooked up to shut up.
James Butts probably thought that just the threat of a lawsuit from the city council would intimidate his critic into silence. But when that didn't happen, and Butts' un-American abuse of the courts was exposed, Butts repeatedly tried to hide from reporters, like the coward he is.
Mr. Mayor? Mayor Butts? We tried to get a response from Mayor Butts twice at City Hall, but each time he walked away and told us we had to make an appointment and was too busy to talk with us at that moment. Too busy to talk with us at that moment. Too busy to talk with us at that moment. Too busy to talk with us at that moment.
This case was public knowledge for about 7 months. Residents regularly complained to the city council in front of Willie Brown that the council was spending about $10,000 a month of their tax dollars on attorney fees to handle the case. Not one legal, consumer rights, intellectual property, or civil rights expert that was interviewed on any TV news, any radio station, in any newspaper, or on any website said the case stood a chance. And many said it was a clear attempt for the city to violate free speech. However, never in 7 months did Willie Brown ever write one word about the case in his paper until the case was over. And even then, Brown's paper very conveniently left out all the evidence of the overwhelming condemnation of the council, and James Butts in particular, around the country, for using tax dollars to try to intimidate a critic of James Butts. Not a word was written by Brown's paper about how critical the judge was of the city council, or most importantly, that the judge ordered the council to pay $117,000 to the defendant's attorneys because the judge said that the council filed a blatantly frivolous lawsuit that was most likely an attempt to stifle free speech. And not that it's the most important thing, but I did mention the money, right? So if you would have asked Willie, he probably would have told you that he and the council's crooked little understanding was working well. He's made money, gained prestige, and helped crooked politicians like James Butts hide his dishonest and illegal actions from the public. And like all James Butts shills, Willie also apparently gets immunity from police if he threatens or tries to intimidate any of James Butts' critics. If this clip doesn't give you a sense of how unstable and potentially violent Brown is, I can tell you that not only have I been the target of Brown's personal attempts at intimidation in meetings, but I have personally seen and heard Brown threaten to beat up one of James Butts' critics in a council meeting. But Willie Brown's crooked little understanding with the council got him into some big trouble in 2013. Willie Brown was being paid to help a city council candidate, sponsored by James Butts, win an election against Councilwoman Judy Dunlap. So Willie decided to earn his money by making up a defamatory story about one of James Butts' critics and claimed that that critic worked for Dunlap. Willie Brown decided to lie to his readers in his story, and that story got Willie sued for libel. Willie hired a high-priced attorney, but there was a videotape proving that he had deliberately lied. So after a judge ruled that the plaintiff had met his burden of proof that Willie had deliberately published a libelous story, and after Willie Brown was forced to repeatedly admit in a 165-page deposition that he had repeatedly lied over and over in his paper, Willie Brown was forced to settle out of court or be found guilty of libel. So Brown signed an agreement to not only pay a cash settlement, but to admit in writing, in a story retraction, that he had lied to his readers, lied to Inglewood's voters. Brown was forced to not only post the retraction on his paper's website every day for a month, but also to print 3 months' worth of retractions in his paper, starting on May 7th, 2015. And not that it's the most important thing, but I did mention the money, right? There's a few ways to know for sure if someone really doesn't care about or respect you. If you give them money to buy you lunch, and they buy it at a place with a big sign in the window saying it's infected with vermin. If you ask them to hire a babysitter for your anniversary, and they hire a meth head who's on parole. Or if they recommend you to a doctor whose license is suspended just because they get a $25 kickback. Oh, and there's a foolproof way to know if politicians really don't care about or respect their constituents. And that's if the constituents give the politicians money to hire a man to provide them with accurate information about what's going on in their city, but instead the politicians hire a man who is just ordered by a judge to stand trial for libel because the evidence showed that the man had deliberately lied to all of those constituents about what was going on in their city. And then those politicians kept hiring that man week after week, even after he was forced to publicly admit that he had deliberately lied to all of those constituents. Can there be any better proof than this, that James Butts and the council deliberately pay Willie Brown to lie to and deceive Inglewood's voters? James Butts and the council found out that a judge ruled that Brown had to stand trial for deliberately lying to Inglewood's voters to sway an election, but then Butts and the council not only keep paying Brown week after week, but as we'll see next, they help hide Brown's crime from the voters, and Butts defends Brown for lying to the voters. And evidencing the fact that Willie Brown not only gets money, but protection from Butts and the council to be their shill, look where the Inglewood Today paper started being hidden at City Hall, starting the same month that Willie Brown published his very first retraction, his very first admission to the public that he had deliberately lied to his readers, that he had deliberately betrayed the trust of Inglewood's voters. And remember, the city is required by law to make those papers easily available to the public because they contain important legal notices that the public has the right to know about. But even so, week after week after the first retraction was published, the Inglewood Today paper, which was always kept right on top of the City Hall information counter with all the other free papers and flyers, was suddenly and consistently kept hidden, out of sight, under the counter, still bound up, forcing people to specifically ask for the paper to get it.
No Inglewood Today?
Yep, Inglewood Today.
Now, James Butts and the council were repeatedly told in meetings that a judge ruled that the evidence indicated that Willie Brown, the man that they paid every month to provide information to Inglewood's voters, had deliberately lied to those same voters in his paper. However, Butts and the council still kept paying Willie Brown, and James Butts actually defended Willie Brown lying to his readers in a city council meeting.
Mr. Brown, if he made a mistake and there's adjudication against him, that doesn't define his life.
As we heard, James Butts blatantly misrepresented Willie Brown's deliberately lying to his readers, committing libel to sway an election, as a simple mistake that was no big deal. However, as effective a henchman, shill, political flunky as Willie Brown is, because people know Brown doesn't live in Inglewood, and he's worked for James Butts as a political consultant, and Butts and the council pay him a lot of money, Butts and the council need other shills whose ulterior motives for supporting them are less obvious. For instance, there's this man, Curtis Mitchell, whose most notable job was delivering Willie Brown's papers for him. And because Mitchell depended on Brown for income, and because Brown depended on James Butts and the council for income, it's pretty clear that Mitchell had a financial interest for kissing up to James Butts. Week after week, James Butts and Inglewood's council voted to give checks worth hundreds and thousands of dollars to Willie Brown to put the city's legal notices in his papers. And then Willie Brown used some of that money to give Mr. Mitchell and Brown's other employees checks to work for him. So James Butts and the council paying Willie Brown obviously had something to do with Willie Brown paying Mr. Mitchell and Inglewood Today's other employees. But when it was repeatedly pointed out in meetings that Willie Brown getting so much money from the city was keeping Brown's paper from publishing negative stories about James Butts and the council, Mr. Mitchell tried to mislead the public, saying that the money Willie Brown gives him and other employees at Inglewood Today had nothing to do with the money that the council gave Willie Brown.
Well, I can honestly say after working with the Inglewood Today for 3 years that the mayor and the city has nothing to do with my paychecks then and the paychecks of the people for the Inglewood Today. They have nothing to do with it.
And Mr. Mitchell got in a bit of trouble when someone discovered that he had left an undetermined amount of Willie Brown's papers in a library parking lot. papers which he was paid to deliver and which are required to be delivered by the city because they have legal notices in them. And when the city pays Willie Brown as much as $13,421 in 1 week to deliver the city's legal notices and ads, Inglewood's taxpayers have the right to expect that Willie Brown and Mr. Mitchell make sure that Brown's papers are delivered on time. But it appears that not only are Willie Brown's papers not always delivered on time, but a significant amount of the time they're not even delivered at all, sometimes for years at a time, at least to all the places Brown says they're being delivered. For example, in every one of Brown's papers, there's a list of locations that Brown claims his papers are being delivered to every Thursday. And Willie Brown makes sure to use the word weekly as much as he can when describing his paper. On Facebook, he's got InglewoodTodayWeekly.com, and he says that he's got weekly viewers and that his paper is published weekly. He brags about his weekly circulation. He charges his customers by how many weeks their ads are in his paper, and he very clearly promises that Inglewood Today Weekly is published every week on Thursday. And there's a very good reason for Willie claiming that the public can get his paper in all these places every week. That's because if Willie's papers aren't delivered every week, according to Inglewood City Charter, Willie is not eligible to get the city of Inglewood's business for publishing their ads and legal notices. The city charter specifically states that the city must use a newspaper of, quote, general circulation to publish its ads and legal notices, and the state of California defines a newspaper of general circulation as a newspaper that is published not less than once a week. So if Willie Brown's paper is not consistently delivered every week, then it is literally illegal for James Butts and the council to pay Brown all that money for all these years to publish their ads and especially their legal notices, which notify the public about time-sensitive legal matters like public hearings. The problem for Mr. Brown and Mr. Mitchell is that right around the time Mitchell abandoned those papers, a casual audit was conducted on some of the businesses on that list, and 80% of the businesses visited didn't have any of Brown's papers there on delivery day. 60% of the businesses had no papers for a while, even for months, and at one business, the manager said she hadn't seen Brown's papers for about a year. So apparently, Mr. Mitchell was not doing a very good job delivering Willie Brown's papers to the places they were supposed to go. And right about the time Mr. Mitchell's poor performance as a delivery man was exposed, he began training to perform a new job as one of James Butts' shills in council meetings. And since then, when he's in the front row week after week, I don't think he can be held responsible if nobody delivers Walgreens papers for a year. But Willie Brown can be held responsible. But that audit showing that Willie's paper was only being delivered to about 20% of the places it was supposed to be delivered was 3 years before the making of this documentary. So I was curious if Willie was still up to his old tricks, taking hundreds of thousands of Inglewood's tax dollars and cheating the taxpayers as well as his other customers. So I checked the most recent list of locations Brown claimed the paper could be found, and sure enough, the Walgreens where the two different managers couldn't even remember the last time the paper was in the store was still on the list. So 3 years ago, the manager said she hadn't seen Brown's paper in the store for about a year. And recently the manager said he couldn't remember the last time he'd seen Brown's paper in the store. So even though Walgreens is on Brown's list as a place you can get the paper, it's possible that it hasn't been delivered to Walgreens for about 4 years. So that information, combined with the knowledge that Willie Brown is about as crooked as they come, was all the reason we needed to perform a more comprehensive audit of all the locations Willie Brown claimed his papers could be found. Because if Willie Brown is only delivering his papers to 20% of the places he's telling all his customers they're being delivered, he's cheating all his customers, not just the city of Inglewood. And just as importantly, if that's what Willie's doing, and the Inglewood City Council knows about it, they are all breaking the law. Now, we didn't want to be accused of picking and choosing what businesses to audit, and we weren't going to check 135 locations, so we picked all the locations on Crenshaw Boulevard, which runs right down the middle of Inglewood. 19 businesses, according to Willie Brown. The audit was performed Thursday, June 16th, between the hours of 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. At the end of the workday, on the very day that Willie Brown himself claims that his paper is published, and the results of that audit might be a little bit disturbing to Willie Brown. First, Brawley Hut is a hamburger stand, not a barbershop, and they had Brown's papers, but they were 2 weeks old. Next, a nail shop, a fish market, and 3 barbershops were all supposed to have papers in the corner mall. Problem is, the nail shop and the fish market didn't have any papers. And all 3 barbershop locations were in the exact same barbershop. Brown had listed 3 barber chairs in the same shop as 3 different barbershops. And the only barber that had a stack had ones that were last week's edition. And how about Super Fish Market on Crenshaw? Winchell's Donut Shop? None at all. Superior Groceries? No papers. And how about the tobacco shop, the phone shop, the insurance place, the beauty supply shop, and Big Five? All businesses in the same shopping center, and not one of them had a paper. In fact, only the tobacco shop remembered ever having them, but he started refusing delivery some time ago. So we're about 2/3 through the audit now, and you can tell it's not looking good for Willie getting out of this, with any kind of decent number of businesses where he claims you can get his paper actually having his paper. At this point, Willie's just praying to avoid a shutout. Nick's check cashing, payday loans, Gateway Tax Service, where the lady literally looked at us like we were crazy when we asked her if she ever had any Inglewood Today papers there. Chili Verde, which is actually in Hawthorne, but the employee still said he'd never seen the paper in there. Gin's Liquor, and this is really bad. Gin's Liquor's been closed, obviously closed, for about 2 years. And now, the final chance for Willie Brown to say that any current issues of his papers were at any of the places that he had promised the public and his customers they'd be on Crenshaw Boulevard. Here's Copy City. Now, a side note on Copy City, it's not in Inglewood. It's about 5 miles away from all the other locations we checked on Crenshaw. It's in Los Angeles. So Copy City was not visited, it was called. And when asked if they had a current copy of Inglewood Today, the employees said they did. So the official tally of the audit is this. Out of the 19 locations on Crenshaw that Willie Brown claimed you could find his papers on Thursday, 18 locations had no current papers, and only 1 location had current papers. That's only 5% of the locations Brown claimed you could find his paper on Thursdays actually having current papers. Now, there were witnesses and some video confirming this audit, and we could have very easily just pointed out this 1 location out of 19 location failure by Willie Brown to live up to his claim that he publishes a weekly paper that people can pick up many places around the city. But we wanted to be fair. So the very next week, this time after office hours, from about 5:15 p.m. to about 6:45 p.m., when all of the papers certainly should have been delivered, we did another audit at the exact same places. And there were more places that had the papers, but not that many more. In fact, out of 19 places, only 5 had the Inglewood Today papers. They were all the current edition, but there were only 5 out of 19, which equals only 26%. So it's very clear that James Butts and the council don't hire Willie Brown to publish 99% of their ads and legal notices because Willie Brown is honest or cares about telling Inglewood's residents the truth. I mean, he was sued for libel, deliberately lying to his readers and had to pay a settlement and print months and months worth of retractions admitting he had lied. And as we just saw, it isn't because he gives the city its money's worth. He only apparently delivers his papers to between 5% and 26% of all the places he promises he'll deliver them to. No, James Butts and the council hire their buddy Willie Brown to publish 99% of their ads and legal notices specifically because they have a crooked little deal with Willie, that if they continue to pay him, he will continue to lie for them. And this is Willie AG, a retired truck driver who has the most experience being James Butts' shill. And he's the only one with an official position with the city. AG constantly promotes and defends Butts and attacks Butts' critics no matter what Butts does wrong. And as with all James Butts shills, Willie AG gets special treatment in council meetings, like getting extra time to speak and being allowed to talk about things that aren't on the agenda when that's not allowed. And he loves the attention he gets from being one of James Butts' shills.
People out there in television land, they looking at me right now. So, that's a good thing.
Again, AG was a shill. He promoted Butts and others not because he believed in what they were doing, but because he was getting special treatment for what he was doing. And AG was shameless in his role as a pitchman. He even used city council meetings to do commercials for businesses.
I feel very good about here in this city. We have a restaurant that just opened up here in this city. I had breakfast there this morning. And honest to goodness, I thought my mother had come back from the grave and cooked those salmon croquettes.
Comments at city council meetings are supposed to relate to city business. And yes, a restaurant in the city could be seen as city business, but James Butts would regularly interrupt and criticize his critics for publicizing things that could also be seen as city business that he didn't want them to publicize. Listen to AG slip into his pitchman voice at the end of his comments as he reads his script.
It's the Rusty Pot Cafe, located at 324 South Market Street, and I'll be there tomorrow eating chicken wings and, what do you call it? Waffles. Thank you very much.
And because AG considered himself a celebrity pitchman, he liked to use his catchphrase as much as he could.
The naysayers are really on it today.
I mean, he used it a lot.
Believe me, the naysayers are loaded tonight. When I say naysayers don't count. Naysayers. The naysayers, these naysayers, the naysayers, like the naysayers, I had given that up, but I have to bring it back. The naysayers.
You see, Willie isn't much on understanding facts. At least that's how it appears. So his job as a shill was just to ignore the facts and tell people in this simple way to just ignore the
naysayers that get up here and complain.
Now, Willie rarely explained why people should ignore the many complaints about Butts and the council. He'd just tell people they should and say he thought Butts and the council were great guys doing a great job. But to say that, AG had to constantly and hypocritically ignore a whole lot of evidence from a whole lot of people that proved that that wasn't true. For instance, even before James Butts became mayor of Inglewood, people started to notice that he had quite a temper, and that he would regularly lose that temper and do things that indicated that he could be violent. But Willie AG ignored the facts and told everyone that James Butts was a great guy. For years, Willie AG has blindly and apparently insincerely defended Butts against the ever-growing mountain of evidence of Butts' serious public and personal misconduct, no matter who provided that evidence, even if it was Butts' own family. As we touched on earlier, when it was brought up that James Butts' daughter and his wife at the time had reported to law enforcement that Butts had choked his wife into unconsciousness, Willie AG had no problem with Butts' violent past. And when James Butts admitted in a meeting that he had approved his officers in Santa Monica being trained to violate people's civil rights, Willie AG had no problem with that.
Now, in 1993, I signed a training bulletin that was put out by a guy named DeValis Rutledge from Orange County. He was a district attorney, deputy district attorney, and he did training, and it talked about questioning outside Miranda.
Butts being sued for having his officers trained to violate civil rights and losing the case was talked about in many meetings, so Willie AG can't claim that he was unaware of what Butts did. And when James Butts used Inglewood's tax dollars to try to commit censorship to hide his own misconduct, Willie AG had absolutely no problem with what James Butts did. And when Willie AG heard in meeting after meeting that the LA County DA's Bureau of Fraud and Corruption Prosecutions had watched videos of council meetings and found that James Butts had repeatedly violated state law and civil rights in those meetings, Willie AG's moronic excuses for Butts destroyed any credibility he ever had.
I was here tonight. The man got kicked out. He deserved to be kicked out.
And why exactly did he deserve to be kicked out?
He's been complaining about the mayor for many years, ever since the mayor been up there.
So according to Willie AG, James Butts should be able to kick people out of city council meetings because they complain about him. And as un-American as that statement was, then AG misleads the public saying that Butts committed all of his crimes before he was mayor of Inglewood, as if that would make everything all right. AG said this even though he knew that the DA had just found him guilty of violating state law and civil rights.
He's been complaining about the mayor for many years, ever since the mayor been up there, about something that happened before Mayor Butts was elected, and that's a fact.
Again, Willie AG either wasn't very good with facts, or he was very good at pretending that he wasn't good with facts. True, people did complain about things Butts did before he was mayor, but AG knew that Butts was regularly criticized for what he did as mayor. We don't have enough time in this video to list all of the crimes and misconduct James Butts committed as mayor of Inglewood, but just Google anybody but James Butts for anything, and you'll see some of them. Now, when AG makes this next statement, remember that the LA County DA found Butts guilty based on videotapes of actual meetings. So they knew exactly what went on.
Mr. Teixeira talks about a letter we got from the district attorney's office, and he showed him a video where we put him out and.
Now, this is why Willie AG was James Butts' top shill, because he could lie, say such moronic things with such a straight face. Here he implies that the DA only found Butts guilty of breaking the law and civil rights because they didn't see what really happened.
I was here tonight. The man got kicked out. He deserved to be kicked out. If the DA had been here, she'd have kicked him out too.
Just think about that for 1 second.
He showed him a video where we put him out, and
if the DA had been here, she'd have kicked him out too.
Again, we don't have enough time in this video to show all the dozens, if not hundreds of times that James Butts either blatantly lied, contradicted himself, violated meeting rules, violated the law and civil rights, and Willie AG consistently and insincerely defended him by ignoring the facts, lying, or misleading the public. But suffice it to say that AG never criticized Butts for anything that I can remember. Now, some people might say that Willie AG may not be bright enough to understand that free speech in a democracy means that people have the right to criticize their mayor in council meetings. He might be giving his honest opinions and not just saying whatever he has to say to help James Butts. Some people might say that Willie AG is not a shill and would do and say the exact same things if it was someone else besides James Butts doing what James Butts was doing. But as we'll see now, these people would be wrong.
Comments, as you recall, some of you may recall, at the last public comment session, there were individuals who spoke, and I think at the end of that, session indicated that we were going to reopen public comments during this meeting at the continuance, and that individuals who spoke would not be able to speak. Both I and the council reconsidered that thought, and so we wanted those individuals who wish to speak now, who spoke in the previous public hearing, they will be limited to 1 minute in comments, and any individual who did not speak at that time but would like to speak at this point will have the traditional 3 minutes for public comment. So if you have any comments that you'd like to make at this time, and I have a list of names, I could read them out, or I could notify you as you post. Well, let me tell you what, why not read them out so we all know who they are.
Pay close attention to what Willie AG says about the issue of how much time residents should get to speak at one city council meeting when James Butts was not mayor.
My name is Willie AG. I don't think I spoke. I don't need the 3 minutes. I just need to say this. That's discrimination. Either you're going to let the people speak or you don't let them speak. I don't think you have the authority, Mayor, to sit there and make decisions on your own. I don't think so. So if you're going to let the people speak, let them speak for the 3 minutes. So if you're going to let the people speak, let them speak for the 3 minutes. Let them speak for the 3 minutes. Let them speak for the 3 minutes. Let them speak for the 3 minutes.
So when Danny Tabor was mayor, and he announces that he and the council decided to give residents who already spoke on an issue at a prior meeting an extra minute to speak on the same issue, AG says it's discrimination, and that the mayor didn't have the authority to do it, and that residents should get a full 3 minutes to speak. But when James Butts became mayor and single-handedly cut residents' time to 1 minute to speak, forever, for no reason, this is what Willie said.
Second, public comments are now limited to 1 minute, and that's going to be the way we go in the future. So, public comment regarding other matters personally wish to address the council on any matter connected with city business not elsewhere considered may do so at this time.
Residents are shocked, but Willie AG's not a hypocrite. He's going to say that it's discrimination, and that the mayor can't do that, and that Butts should give the speakers 3 minutes.
I don't know what I'm going to do with my extra time.
So Willie AG angrily cried, "Discrimination!" and claimed that Daniel Tabor and the entire council, remember, didn't have the authority to give residents only an extra minute to speak. But when James Butts permanently cut residents' time to speak on non-agenda items from 3 minutes to only 1 minute, the shortest amount of time of any city in the South Bay, Willie AG, shill that he is, didn't have a problem with it. In fact, he was happy about it.
1 minute is plenty of time for me. As a matter of fact, I was going to suggest to you that you cut it down to 1 minute.
Willie AG brags about being a real veteran, but he's about to prove that he's not a real American. He does not support democracy or the Constitution.
You know, if you got anything positive to say, you can say it.
So Willie AG's requirements for comments at a city council meeting in America is that the comments have to be positive.
And I'm tired of seeing people disrespect this council and staff. It's sickening.
And then AG apparently defines positive comments as being those which are positive or complimentary about the city council and staff.
And this will partly take care of it. And if they continue to come up here demeaning everybody, then I'm going to ask you to cut it down to 30 seconds. Thank you very much.
Now, let's summarize what Willie AG, who claims to be an American, just said. He said that he didn't like what some people were saying at city council meetings. He said that he was glad that James Butts cut their constitutionally guaranteed time to speak at a city council meeting to only 1 minute, because now those people won't be able to say as much of the things that he doesn't like. And then he said that if those people kept saying the things that he doesn't like at city council meetings, Butts should cut their time even more, to only 30 seconds. With the natural progression of AG's un-American vision being that if people still said things that he didn't like after that, then Butts should give them less time to speak, and eventually take away their time completely. Because Willie AG doesn't believe in the First Amendment or the right to free speech, or democracy. He believes that James Butts should have the power to take away a citizen's constitutional right to free speech at a city council meeting if Butts or AG doesn't like what those people are saying. And to show what kind of massive hypocrite AG is, remember, he's the man that said this.
I just need to say this. That's discrimination. My name is Willie AG. I don't know what I'm going to do with my extra time. Either you don't let the people speak, or you don't let them speak. 1 minute is plenty of time for me. I don't think you have the authority, Mayor, to sit there and make decisions on your own. As a matter of fact, I was going to suggest to you that you cut it down to 1 minute. So if you're going to let the people speak, let them speak for the 3 minutes. And if they continue to come up here demeaning everybody, then I'm going to ask you to cut it down to 30 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is one world-class hypocrite. One world-class shill. But one terrible American.
I have a big problem.
Now, I want to set up a clip by showing that James Butts admitted that he cut the public's time to speak on his own, not with the council like Mayor Tabor did.
Question. When you changed the minutes, the time, did you all vote on this as a whole, or did you just...
No, I'm the chair. I set the times meeting by meeting, actually.
Okay.
First, Butts just admitted that he's supposed to set the time for comments meeting by meeting, not in advance. But this next clip not only shows Willie AG misleading the public by saying that the entire council cut the public's time to speak, not just the mayor, which is the exact opposite deception as AG used with Mayor Tabor, but it also shows Butts blatantly letting his shills talk about subjects he doesn't let his critics talk about. In fact, Butts lets his shills use those subjects as code words to allow them to talk about whatever they want to talk about. But watch what happens when a critic of James Butts does the same thing.
Good evening. Gil Matthew, District 4, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to speak concerning financial condition of this city. Here again, we have the successor agency.
Mr. Matthew?
Yes, sir.
That's not on the agenda. You can speak
Finance
about
is on the agenda, sir.
Where's that?
On where Warren and Bills.
No, I'm not going to allow that from now on. No, I'm not going to allow that from now on. I'm not going to allow that from now on. I'm not going to allow that.
But watch what happens when Willie AG does the same thing.
My name is Willie AG, and I live in the beautiful city of Inglewood. I believe that this is a charter city. Am I correct in that?
Yes. But we're gonna have to talk about one of the items on the agenda.
I'm finance.
All right.
Finance. I believe that we have 5 elected officials here to represent this city. I believe that's correct. I believe if those 5 council people decide to limit it to 30 seconds, I believe they have a right to do it.
Well, Miss AG, you're going to have to talk to her about that at the end. About time. It's going to have to be something that's on the agenda.
Finance.
All right. We're working towards it, I imagine.
And James Butts lets him keep talking. And that's the hypocritical and illegal game James Butts plays as mayor. And as we'll see later, he didn't do it once in a while, he did it regularly. And for AG's blind and unending support, James Butts lets this nobody retired truck driver be a somebody, the mayor's appointed parks commissioner, and AG gets to meet, mingle, and even dine with accomplished people without AG having to worry about actually accomplishing anything himself. And, disturbingly, AG also gets to not worry about going to jail or even being bothered by the police in council meetings if he verbally or physically harasses or even assaults any of James Butts' critics. AG would regularly harass Butts' critics, and at one council meeting, AG didn't like my comments and angrily backed me up over 20 feet into an elevator, where some of the people behind him, including the police commissioner, finally had to restrain him, pulling him out of the elevator away from me. But even though there was a police officer 30 feet away, and even though there were many witnesses that AG was threatening me with violence, including an Inglewood police commissioner, nothing was done, because James Butts protects his shills. Now, as I mentioned, Willie AG is the only one of James Butts' shills that has an official position with the city as a parks commissioner. According to a document we'll see later signed by James Butts, AG has been a parks commissioner for many years. And if you're thinking that AG has kept his position as a parks commissioner for so long because he did a good job, that seems highly unlikely, especially considering all the serious problems Inglewood's parks have had while he's been in this position, including the number of young people who have been shot or killed in those parks. Now, some might say that it's not fair to hold AG responsible for serious safety problems in Inglewood's parks, but I say it is fair if he was in a position to help, but he put his job as a shill for James Butts, even before Butts was mayor, over his responsibility to help protect the city's residents. For instance, when James Butts was running for mayor against Daniel Tabor, there was a murder in one of the parks Willie AG had overseen for years, and a number of people commented on it in the next council meeting.
We have the woman that got killed at the park.
I was moving around pretty fast, different citizens this afternoon, and what was on their mind was the lady that was shot at Rogers Park. And I know it's on all of our heart.
And this incident in Rogers Park, that park's name pops up all the time. Rogers Park is a shooting gallery, it would appear.
I was listening to the radio, and this is the first broadcast I've heard mentioning Inglewood in a long time. It was about what everybody else is talking about here today, the shooting on Saturday.
But when it was Willie AG's turn to speak, he decided to exploit the murder of a woman in one of the parks he had been commissioner over for so many years as a campaign ad for mayoral candidate James Butts, claiming Butts as a savior who would end all crime in the city and teach all people of all races to live together happily.
As far as the crime is concerned, you're going to have crime as long as you don't have leadership in this city.
Even before James Butts was mayor, AG was misleading the public as his shill, promoting Butts by making claims that were completely contradicted by the facts, like claiming James Butts could eliminate crime as a mayor when Butts couldn't even keep crime from going up dramatically when Butts was running Inglewood's police department. Again, AG was such a shill. He was telling people that James Butts would not only end crime, but cause all people to live together in peace.
If this city gets the right leadership, crime can be settled in this city. The Asians, the blacks, the Hispanics can learn how to live together. Like I said, if you don't know how to handle a problem, Mr. Butts has the answers. Thank you.
And after Butts became mayor, AG deliberately avoided bringing attention to the fact that the parks he oversaw needed to be more safe. For instance, on October 14, 2012, a young man who by all accounts was a hard-working resident of Inglewood was shot and killed while sitting in a car with his girlfriend at Darby Park. Now, AG coincidentally didn't come to the meeting immediately after the killing, but when AG did come to the next meeting, do you think he told Butts and the council that something needed to be done to protect people at the parks he oversaw? No. AG completely avoided that subject. Instead, AG disrespected the young man who was killed in one of the parks he oversaw by acting like there was a much more urgent matter that needed to be addressed at Darby Park.
My name is Willie AG, and I live in the beautiful city of Inglewood. I'm not too sure whether, I'm on the right track here or not, but what would work? I would like something that I have been trying to get done for the last 10 years.
Now, about a week after someone had been killed in a park in Inglewood, a longtime Inglewood Parks commissioner gets up at the first meeting he'd attended since the killing and says that there's been something he's been trying to get done for 10 years. Is it having permanent park police patrolling all Inglewood parks? Is it having police patrol the park regularly during nighttime hours when the killing occurred? Or is it to have police substations at each park? Let's see.
And that is slurry the walking track at Derby Park.
That's right. A week earlier, a young man was killed sitting next to his girlfriend in one of the parks Willie AG oversaw. And the burning issue on Willie AG's mind was repaving the walking track at that same park. But unfortunately for AG, this was the time to talk about things that are on the agenda, and paving the walking track at a park was not on the agenda.
I would love to see that done before we have Martin Luther King's.
That's not on this agenda.
It's not on the public work. My name is Willie AG.
But when Willie AG got another chance to raise the issue of safety in Inglewood's parks, AG chose to disrespect the death of that young man and all those who've been injured or killed in Inglewood parks, the parks he is responsible for, and instead talk about the space shuttle, Inglewood School Board, and how much he liked his dentist. So no, Willie AG has not done a good job as a parks commissioner, and yes, I do believe that he does have some responsibility for serious problems in Inglewood's parks, including crime. And he's gone along with James Butt's plan to hide the amount of crime in Inglewood altogether, including in his first term as mayor, Butt's ending the publishing of crime statistics in Inglewood. Why did they do this? Well, Butts helped IPD hide both the frequency of crimes in Inglewood and IPD's deliberate avoidance of investigating crimes in Inglewood because Butts was in law enforcement and ran on a public safety issue. But the fact was that crime was still going up after Butts became mayor. It went up over 3% in 3 years, 2% in 2014 alone, and violent crime went up to 6% in 2014 alone. So not coincidentally, in the year Butts had to run for re-election, Inglewood's crime statistics stopped being published because those were some very embarrassing crime statistics for James Butts. Considering crime was generally going down in the United States, he ran for mayor saying his experience in law enforcement gave him the ability to decrease crime, and basically he and his shill Willie AG promised this.
As far as the crime is concerned, you're going to have crime as long as you don't have leadership in this city. If this city gets the right leadership, crime can be settled in this city. Like I said, if you don't know how to handle the problem, Mr. Butts has the answers.
Now, maybe I'm not objective or know enough to rate what Willie AG has accomplished in the 15 or so years he's been an Inglewood commissioner. But even if you ask James Butts, someone who certainly owes AG the favor of highlighting whatever accomplishments AG has in the last 15 years, not even Butts appears to be able to come up with much, even when that's required by law. Specifically, in June of 2016, James Butts wanted to repay Willie AG for being such an effective shill for so many years and rename a park theater after AG. However, there was a city ordinance governing the renaming of city buildings, and that ordinance required that Butts provide adequate evidence that AG was worthy of such an honor. And as we'll see, Butts realized that AG wasn't, and decided to, again, break the law to get what he wanted. Now, we've already spent a lot of time talking about Willie AG in this video, so if you want to see the story of how James Butts blatantly violated 2 laws, one which he had apparently just created only weeks earlier. Google James Butts renames the Inglewood Playhouse illegally. And up until late 2015, this woman, Ethel Austin, was James Butts' biggest supporter.
So what is going on with this world? And you could laugh all you want, because when you're wrong, you don't admit it. You're ignorant. You're an old ignorant fool. That's what you are. And a lot of you all should be barred out of here. See that laughing, how stupid and ignorant he is to be so old? An old damn fool.
Miss Austin just violated 4 areas of the rules of decorum for the meetings. She made loud, personal, abusive, and profane comments. But as long as she's directing those comments towards James Butts' critics, Butts stays quiet. Hey, but at least she didn't make any threatening comments, right? Oh, wait a minute. She wasn't done yet.
Yeah, but everybody else get 30 minutes. Butt that man out before somebody hurt that man.
And there it is. And when a mayor demonstrates approval for his supporters being more and more abusive and more threatening, his supporters naturally get more and more abusive and more threatening. And if you're saying to yourself, hey, if any of the mayor's supporters get too aggressive and it seems like they're really going to hurt someone, you can just go to the police, right? Sorry, but the Inglewood Police Department is notorious for avoiding investigating any crimes, let alone those done by the mayor's shills. And let's be clear, Penal Code 422.6 states that it is a crime for any person to use force or even intimidation to keep any other person from exercising any right given to them by the U.S. Constitution. So when Ethel Austin stands up in a meeting and yells out that if a certain resident keeps coming to meetings, she or someone else might hurt that resident, that is intimidation, meant to keep someone from coming to council meetings, which is a right granted to them by the Constitution.
Butt that man out before somebody hurt that man. Butt that man out. Butt that man out. Butt that man out before somebody hurt that man.
And James Butts encouraging Miss Austin and his other shills to be so loud and so threatening against residents week after week, while he isn't acting much better, is how James Butts promotes violence in city council meetings. Oh, and when it comes to Mayor James Butts' biggest supporter, Ethel Austin, you haven't even heard profane yet. This is something that Miss Austin posted on her internet page. And warning, you need to send the kids out of the room.
I don't want no rookie in my motherfucker. Because usually new and if she fuck my hair up, I'm gonna have to fuck her. And then after I fuck her up, I'm gonna fuck you up. Then after fucking you up, that bad bitch called Katrina over there, I'm gonna shoot that bitch who's bad. I'm gonna put a Louisiana whipping on her motherfucker.
And that goes on for a while. And this is a woman who regularly and hypocritically cited scriptures in Jesus' name to criticize Butts' opponents.
You ought to just stop. Go to church. Go to church. Find Jesus. And if she fuck my hair up, I'm gonna have to fuck her. Find Jesus in your life. And then after I fuck her up, I'm gonna fuck you up. Jesus in your life. Then after fucking you up, that bad bitch called Katrina over there, I'm gonna shoot that bitch who's bad. I'm gonna put a Louisiana whipping on her motherfucker. Find Jesus in your life. Find Jesus in your life. Jesus in your life. Jesus in your life. Find Jesus in your life.
And so if you're James Butts' biggest supporter in city council meetings, and you breathe out profanity like it's air, and you're loud, abusive, and even threatening to other residents that criticize James Butts, what does James Butts and his council do when you move out of the state? Well, if James Butts and the council didn't take that opportunity to criticize Miss Austin's past behavior in meetings, what would they do? Well, Miss Austin didn't rate as high as Willie AG, so the council didn't name a theater after her. But if you're James Butts' most intimidating flunky, he'll honor you in a council meeting, give you a plaque, have the city's official paper put you on the front page, and they name you Inglewood's ambassador. You see, like others who come to council meetings just to defend James Butts and attack his critics, Ethel Austin was an unemployed political opportunist. She used her aggressive attacks to gain favors from politicians, whatever politician she could. In fact, before former Inglewood City Council member Judy Dunlap, who opposed James Butts, lost her bid for re-election, Miss Austin was her attack dog. Austin would not only support Dunlap in council meetings, but she would plainly state her dissatisfaction with James Butts, who she referred to as Satan, and other council members and city officials in the local paper that supported Dunlap, the Morningside Chronicle.
You just got the beginning. We were together when you spoke and I walked away from you because you're Satan. You're Satan.
In fact, in the last hours of Election Day in the 2013 runoff election between Judy Dunlap and Alex Padilla, I saw Austin and Dunlap standing all alone outside a polling place as if they were sisters. So it would be understandable that in council meetings, Austin would be fervently attacking Butts and his supporters, like this.
These two, I'm going to just tell the people the way it is. If you vote for Padilla, you got a dirty cop coming. From Santa Monica, his brother was pervert on the Santa Monica Pier, swept under there. Also, Mike Stevens.
So when Austin uses abusive language against Butts' ally, Alex Padilla, Butts has no problem recessing the meeting, turning the cameras off, and ejecting Austin. And when Austin attacks him...
We don't like you, the city hates your guts.
You've done this, Austin.
Wait, Ray. You always, you know what? I'm about to get you, brother. Brother Jesus gonna get you. You gonna be at that one stop, pervert, rape your own daughter.
Okay, and also you're ejected from the next meeting.
So as we just saw and heard...
You've done this, Austin.
James Butts had no problem ejecting Miss Austin when she was abusive towards him in meetings. But then Councilwoman Dunlap lost the election, so Miss Austin joined the team of James Butts, who she had been calling Satan. She used the same loud, profane, and threatening tactics as before, but now against the critics of James Butts and his allies, those allies including Alex Padilla, who Austin had called a dirty cop with a pervert brother. So where Butts used to eject Austin for her deranged behavior, now he supports it, not throwing her out of meetings, but praising her in meetings. And instead of Miss Austin calling James Butts Satan, now when people criticize Butts, she does what Willie AG did, comparing him to Jesus by name.
We have to stop. It's most of you all messing around, driving stuff through the mayor, nails like they did Jesus, nails like they did Jesus, nails like they did Jesus.
And instead of what Butts does with his critics, regularly interrupting them and impatiently watching the clock so he can immediately cut them off, with Austin now on his team, he sits quietly, giving her extra time to finish. And if she asks, giving her even more time, to the point where she and his other supporters recognize that they are being given special treatment, being given more rights than other residents.
We don't need a police to be inside mayor patrolling when we don't have nobody to take care of the people.
Okay.
Osorio need to be out there helping the people on the blocks and stuff like that, like the trash cans. Now here we trying to do it. Now you wait, well hold up, you gotta give me a minute now. You gotta give me a minute.
Miss Austin, I
Please.
don't have to give you a minute, but I'd be glad.
Please.
I'd be glad to give you.
Please, thank you, man, thank you.
And almost mocking the rights of the other residents, his critics, James Butts gave Austin significant extra time, even when it appeared she had nothing left to say.
I gave you a minute.
You ain't never lied. What was it? I guess I did it, man. I don't need it after all.
James Butts shamelessly violated free speech, cutting people off who criticized him, but giving extra time to his shills when they were kissing up to him.
The mayor, he has a good heart. He was here crying when I was crying. I mean, the man is trying all he can, and could I have an extra minute, Mayor, Council? He's trying all he can to try to get us out of this whole...
Now, James Butt's giving Miss Austin extra time to speak, even when she didn't need it, just because she supports him in council meetings, is a clear violation of the other residents' civil rights. Everyone should get equal time to speak in meetings. However, you can't even imagine the degree to which James Butts will violate people's civil rights. Just because Miss Austin was James Butt's shill, Butts not only let her speak when her time was over, but he let her speak even when the time for all public comments was over. For instance, you recall that in 2013, the LA County DA found James Butts guilty of repeatedly violating state law and civil rights in city council meetings. And needless to say, when that fact was brought up in city council meetings, James Butts was looking for someone to defend him. However, no one stepped up to the podium. Not even Ethel Austin.
Close public comment.
So with no one stepping to the podium, James Butts closed public comments and opened council comments, starting with Alex Padilla, who Butts gave an extra minute to speak, but who still didn't try to defend Butts from the damaging information that the DA found that he had violated the law and civil rights. So Butts got tired of waiting for a volunteer to defend him and decided to draft Ethel Austin, who he knew would defend him.
Thank you so very much.
Okay. Now before we go forward, Miss Austin, you look like you were getting ready to stand. Did you want to speak? With the permission of council, I open public comment. Go ahead, Miss Austin.
Thank you.
James Butts completely changed the order of the meeting for his own benefit. And it didn't take Miss Austin long to do exactly what Butts put her up there to do.
It's time to stop, guys. If the DA wants the mayor, they know what to do. They'll come in and handcuff him. DA don't play. If they want the mayor just like they got Rizzo, they know what to do with it. So, just to keep coming up here to tell the people and the taxpayers, we don't want to know that. All we care about is this city moving.
And Austin continued to praise and defend Butts in the council, past her 3-minute time limit, with Butts' blessing.
And why we just badger this mayor and this council? We got 2 new members that should not be badgered like we doing. I was wrong when I did it. I realized and I started reading and watching things in this city. Padilla the first really moving in his district. And I live in his district. We have never had this in our district like Padilla is doing. And don't worry about the clock. That's the chairman.
She keeps talking, attacking the Constitution.
You have to put a stop. A First Amendment. No, that's too much.
Your time is lost.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But Austin keeps speaking, eventually speaking for a full 4 minutes, with James Butts obviously never really trying to stop her. So if you're one of the mayor's shills, or you say the things he wants you to say, he'll give you extra time to speak. And he'll even carve out a special time just for you to speak after all the other members of the public are forbidden to speak. But if you're not a shill and you're talking about something the mayor does not want you to talk about, something very important like the fact that the Inglewood Police Department does not consistently investigate violent crimes, then Butts will do anything in his power, legal or not, to keep you from speaking, including saying that your time is up when everyone there can see you have 30 seconds left.
The night my neighbor's teenage son and his friend, who were just walking down the street wearing regular clothes, were almost killed by a drive-by, one of the excuses IPD gave me for not talking to the victim was, quote, for the simple fact that if this person's being shot at, there's a reason he's being shot at, unquote. This is that officer.
Sergeant, your time is up, Mr. Taylor. Sir, take it.
No, actually, yes.
We're in recess. Recess. Sergeant Archer, you?
So let's be clear on what just happened. A resident was playing a tape of a police officer refusing to investigate a shooting in Inglewood that had multiple witnesses and multiple victims, because the officer thought that if someone got shot at, they deserved to get shot at. Butts had been denying that this had ever happened for about 9 months, so this tape made Butts look so bad that even though everyone there saw that the resident had 35 seconds left to speak, Butts lied and said that the resident's time had expired. He then ejected the resident from the meeting. He actually did that. And time after time, James Butts kept those tapes, which proved that the Inglewood Police Department refused to investigate an attempted murder from being played in city council meetings by deliberately violating the law and civil rights by either threatening to eject the resident or actually ejecting the resident. But again, Butts used these types of dishonest, illegal, and un-American tactics regularly. And he didn't care that everyone in the meeting saw that he was violating meeting rules, the law, and civil rights. Here's just one more clear example, and then we'll move on. First, in Inglewood City Council meetings, the public first gets to make comments on things on the meeting agenda, then on things that public hearings are being held for, and at the end of the meeting about anything that relates to city business. The warrant register, also known as payment of the bills, relates to the council approving all the checks that city staff say need to be sent out. The warrant register is always on the agenda. In fact, it is usually the first thing listed on the agenda. James Butts knows this very well. These are the minutes from that September 9th, 2014 council meeting, and it shows that many residents commented on the payment of the bills, again, which are also known as the warrant register. To once again demonstrate how James Butts has absolutely no respect whatsoever for meeting rules, the law, or resident civil rights, we're going to look at the first resident who spoke about the warrant register, again, also known as the payment of the bills. But to set that up, we're going to watch the second person who spoke on the payment of the bills, also called the warrant register, and see if Butts gives him any problems.
Gil Matthew, District 4, Mayor and City Council, speaking on the payment of the bills. Here again, you have the situation of the financial condition of the city, and it's been very reluctant.
Now, as we saw, the third resident announced that he was speaking on the payment of the bills, and Butts didn't stop him. But James Butts had stopped the first speaker, telling him that it wasn't the right time to talk about the payment of the bills, also called the warrant register. What's the difference? The first speaker was pointing out that James Butts' buddy, Willie Brown, shouldn't get paid to publish the city's ads and legal notices because he was being sued for libel. Watch.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Curtis. I'm commenting on the warrant register. As I've said many times, it is unethical for this council and this city clerk to maintain a business relationship with a paper like Inglewood Today and an owner like Willie Brown. Just because you
Note that the speaker started talking about the warrant register at 1 minute 11 seconds, and Butts didn't stop him until he realized how bad the speaker was making he and Willie Brown look.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Curtis. I'm commenting on the warrant register. As I've said many times, it is unethical for this council and this city clerk.
James Butts had no problem with the resident talking about the warrant register at first, but when the resident started complaining that Willie Brown, who a judge had ruled was going to have to stand trial for libel, for lying to the voters, James Butts had a big problem then, and decided to lie to make that problem go away.
He will be deposed, and he will be shown to have deliberately lied.
Mr. Teixeira, you're going to have to finish this at the end of the meeting. It's not about the warrant register right now. 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 It's not about the warrant register right now.
James Butts' deception lasted about 6 minutes, the amount of time it took for two other speakers to get done speaking, and for the resident to figure out that James Butts had tried to pull a fast one.
Sir, Inglewood Today is on warrant register, and if this is open for agenda items, I'm supposed to be able to speak.
No, absolutely.
Yes, he actually did that. First he said the speaker couldn't speak about the warrant register. Then when he got caught, he said he could. Absolutely. But that's James Butts. He thinks up something devious, gives it a try. If it works, great. If not, he'll think up something more devious another day. So by now it should be obvious that when it comes to how long a speaker gets to speak in meetings, or even if a speaker gets to speak in meetings, James Butts blatantly, unethically, and sometimes illegally abuses his power as city council chairman. And when it's time to speak about matters specifically on the meeting agenda, James Butts regularly lets his supporters talk about issues that are not on the agenda, and he threatens to eject residents that point this out.
I want to say something about Inglewood today.
Well, then you're talking about payment.
Well, let's say about payment of the bills. For us Inglewood today, now, what I call a bad newspaper is Morningside Chronicle. That's the worst paper could have ever floated in this city.
There's no payment to Inglewood today.
Morningside Chronicle.
Hold on one second.
First
if you
of
do that
all,
again, you'll have to leave, and I mean it.
And the most important perk Austin got by joining Team Butts was Butts lying to the public to erase her years of profane, abusive, and bigoted behavior.
And Lord knows, Ethel Austin does not agree with me on everything. But her heart is pure.
I don't want no rookie in my motherfucker. Because usually this is what you have. And if she put my hair up, I'm after her.
And I don't agree with her positions. She doesn't always agree with mine, but her heart is pure.
You and that little stupid motherfucker need to throw that motherfucker in the trash and quit fighting with that woman and get you a real man.
And that's why we recognize her, because her heart is pure.
An old damn fool.
Her heart may be pure, but pure what? Now, if you're wondering what Miss Austin's views are on race relations, she's boldly told Caucasian people attending council meetings that white people shouldn't have anything to say about what goes on in Inglewood. And as we hear next, she is very comfortable stereotyping the voting habits of entire racial and ethnic groups.
No Mexicans voted. And there ain't no blacks gonna vote for me. You know why?
So as you can see, Miss Austin says a lot of things as if she knows a lot of inside information, like who voted or didn't vote for who in an election. So some of you might be thinking, okay, Austin is loud. She's certainly not a consistent or loyal person. I mean, she goes from fervently campaigning for Dunlap in an election to accusing her of election fraud after she loses, and she goes from calling James Butts Satan and telling everyone he raped his own daughter to blasphemously comparing him to Jesus. And even though she's constantly telling everyone how God-fearing she is, she curses like a truck driver and is apparently so proud of this fact that she shamelessly advertises her profanity on her own webpage. And no one can disagree that Ethel Austin has repeatedly made threatening comments and demonstrated dangerous and possibly mentally unstable behaviors. But besides all that, you still might be asking yourself, was Miss Austin honest in city council meetings? Well, Miss Austin was an active supporter of Judy Dunlap. But after she joined James Butts' team, Miss Austin, who literally stood shoulder to shoulder with Councilwoman Dunlap on Election Day, told a whole different story about who won the election and how, and now said that she never even supported Dunlap.
Padilla won fairly and squarely. I must say he did. He really did. We already knew how many votes it took to beat Judy Dunlap. You had to get 990 votes to beat her. She had 983 locked, 1,000 votes. And I'm going to be honest about that. He won it. He did. You know why? Because all the blacks that didn't go to vote, the brown went to vote.
Again, Ethel Austin was an active and vocal Dunlap supporter to the very end of the election day in 2013. But when Dunlap lost and Austin joined James Butts' team, the backstabbing Austin not only tried to pretend like she never supported Dunlap, but she actually told the public that she had, as she put it, busted Dunlap for not actually living in her council district.
Judy Dunlap did not live here. I busted her in 2004.
Now, a council member not living in their district is a federal crime. So Austin's claim that she knew Dunlap was committing that crime implicates Austin in 2 or 3 ways. She supported a candidate that she knew was committing a crime. She kept that crime a secret during the election, and when James Butts was accused of not living in Inglewood, in that same meeting we just saw, Austin told everyone that it didn't matter where James Butts lived.
So what where you live? If the man want to live outside on a curb, that's your business. But yet it's a big deal because the man lived with his brother or whatever. Oh well. So what?
And this blatantly hypocritical contradiction that Dunlap was breaking the law, but James Butts wasn't when they were allegedly doing the exact same thing, proves that the truth was no guideline when Ethel Austin was defending James Butts or his allies. And in that same meeting, Willie Brown, who has never lived in Inglewood, was criticized for his dishonest articles in his paper and his actually calling real Inglewood residents outsiders. In response, Ethel Austin blatantly lied about how long Brown had ties with the city.
And who cares about the LA Times? This man don't have to live here. This man business been in here for 30 years. He paid taxes 40 years here.
Yeah, unfortunately for Ethel, not even Willie Brown agrees with that. In fact, in his Our History segment of his webpage, Willie Brown states specifically that he has a 2-decade history in Inglewood, not 30 years, and especially not 40 years. And even when Ethel Austin says she's going to tell the truth, she doesn't.
And I want to say it straight and tell the truth. The truth shall set you free. You were accused, the mayor was accused of letting me use profanity in the meetings. That's not true. Oh, damn fool. That's not true. Oh, damn fool. That's not true. Oh, damn fool.
So the question is, was Miss Austin honest in what she said in city council meetings? So the answer is no. And if you're wondering if Miss Austin's vile, aggressive persona was just an act, or if she was truly dangerous, all I can tell you is that out of the long-time Inglewood residents who were regulars at council meetings, many, if not most, just took for granted that Miss Austin probably had some sort of mental illness, and that she could become violent. And it was because of that belief that most residents pitied her and didn't ridicule her in meetings for her lies, her nonsensical ramblings, her two-faced backstabbing, and even her threats. Actually, regarding the question of whether Miss Austin really posed an actual threat to anyone's safety, there is something else worth noting. And that is that Miss Austin herself posted on her own website a video documenting that an Inglewood VFW lodge, an organization of soldiers, felt so threatened that they had to take out a restraining order on her.
And so you will be getting a restraining order, as you say. We are. And what would be your reason for getting a restraining order?
So if you get opportunity again, read the letters in which I gave you, and that will clearly state why we're getting a restraining order and why we banded you from the
letter.
This is the kind of woman that James Butts let be as threatening as she wanted to be in city council meetings, as long as she was doing it for him. As I mentioned, many residents just assumed that Miss Austin might have some mental illness, so they would rarely respond to her lies, attacks, or even threats, partly for fear that she might lose control of herself. But she got so bad, with the mayor's blessing, that someone had to say something, no matter what the risk. But hey, maybe all those Inglewood residents and all those war veterans were wrong. Maybe Miss Austin can control her anger. Let's see.
Willie Brown, Ethel Austin, and Stuart Bailey stand at this podium and yell and curse and imply or actually threaten me with violent or illegal acts. Butts never tells the public that any of them are threats to public safety.
Look at the hypocrisy between how James Butts acts when Austin interrupts someone, as we just saw, and when Austin is interrupted by someone.
But now look at us with this man.
Ma'am, if you want to talk, please go out in the hallway. It's not right for you to interrupt people, all right? Go ahead, Miss Austin.
If Miss Austin was a critic of James Butts, the Sergeant of Arms would be removing her from the meeting right now. But because Miss Austin was James Butts' favorite attack dog, she's allowed to stay. Imagine how you would feel if you went to a city council meeting and everyone knew that if you said something that the mayor didn't like, you could not only be ejected, but that you would have to deal with his supporters yelling at you, verbally and physically threatening you, and being allowed to stay in the meeting after they did so.
And James Butts allows Ethel Austin to stand here and yell at people in the audience and use profanity and use bigoted slurs to attack not only me, but Butts and other critics. And Butts allowed her to stand here and threaten me, saying, quote, "Bar that man out before someone hurt that man." That's what she said, speaking about me. Before someone hurt that man. That's what she said on videotape at a city council with Butts listening.
No, I think the vets knew exactly what they were doing.
And so you will be getting a restraining order, as you say.
But even though Miss Austin repeatedly disrupted the meeting, James Butts did not eject her. Instead, she came right back to speak, and by doing so, she proved not only her emotional instability, but her ignorance.
Mr. Testeria wanted to rise out of me, but it ain't gonna work. See, you don't match ignorancy with ignorance. Ignorancy.
Next, there's the issue of money.
I got something to say.
In an August 25, 2015 meeting, a resident pointed out that Ethel Austin and James Butts' other shills were only defending James Butts in meetings because they were either getting some sort of positions or payments from the city council to do so. So, to try to cover up this fact, Ethel Austin got up and tried to make a joke out of it.
I got something to say. When y'all start paying me? Ignorancy. Anybody gonna give me a check around here? I need a check. Ignorancy. I need to get paid. Ignorancy.
Well, since she asked, in the months leading up to the announcement that she was leaving town, Ethel Austin was suddenly and regularly on the city's list of check recipients. All of a sudden, if you look on the city's warrant register or the list of checks being issued, you'll see Ethel Austin's name, with a check for May, $283. Ethel Austin's name for a check in June, $200. And Ethel Austin's name for a check in July for $346. Now, none of the checks said pay off to Ethel Austin for being the mayor's flunky. That would be illegal. However, Miss Austin suddenly starting to get checks from the city for things that happened in 3 straight months, ending right as she was getting ready to leave the city, that's just very suspicious. And when the council was specifically asked about this check for damages and losses, they refused to respond. Now, as we will prove later in this documentary, the City Council had posted the video of the July 14, 2015 meeting where James Butts and the council were specifically asked about that payment to Austin, and where they refused to answer that question. However, as you can see, that video has very conveniently been removed from the public's access. And as we'll see later, that video might have been taken down to hide it, because James Butts and the council were later sued for trying to hide the fact that they were improperly using city funds to pay off people like Ethel Austin. Now, as we'll see later, according to the city's budget and accounting manager at the time, Miss Austin was able to live in a house actually owned by the city of Inglewood because she was on the Section 8 housing program. And so if she would have filed a claim against the city, demanding reimbursement for fixing her floors in a house owned by the city, or maybe to reimburse her for any damages and losses she suffered that she claimed the city owed her, that claim would have been evaluated by the city attorney, just like these on the meeting agenda. And 9 times out of 10, the city attorney denies these type of claims. But as far as I could see, there was never any recommendation in any meeting agenda to either pay or deny Miss Austin's claims. They were just quietly paid. And these stories in the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times might give an insight into why that happened. They describe a lawsuit against Mayor Butts and others by the city's accounting and budget manager at the time Miss Austin's claims were paid. The lawsuit describes many financial irregularities by the city, but it specifically states that Mayor James Butts pressured city administrators to give special treatment to Miss Austin, including giving her money to vacation in Las Vegas. And according to not me, but Inglewood's own accounting and budget manager at the time, James Butts pressured city administrators to give Miss Austin all these special privileges just to try to keep Austin from criticizing him in council meetings. Maybe that's why the council didn't want to explain what this payment to Austin was for, and why the meeting video showing that the council refused to answer that question was removed from the internet.
Before we go to public comment, Mr. Falco and Mr. Dean prepared something for one of our residents that I don't think is going to be with us a whole lot longer.
So when Miss Ethel Austin was criticizing James Butts, Butts would criticize her and eject her from meetings. But after she joined his team, he allowed her to stay in the city council meetings so she could be loud, abusive, profane, and threatening towards his critics, to intimidate them into silence. And when she announces she's leaving the city, he honors her at a meeting, giving her a plaque, and she coincidentally gets hundreds of dollars of going away money from the city. And that's how James Butts gets people to support him in meetings. He gives them special privileges and favors, gives them tickets to events, invitations to parties, awards, plaques, positions with the city, and checks. And again, according to Inglewood's budget and accounting manager at the time, James Butts pressured city staff to pay off people he wanted to support him. And he makes it crystal clear to everyone that if you don't support him, he will violate meeting rules, the law, and your civil rights, and help his possibly mentally unstable shills yell at, threaten, and assault you in and out of meetings. And that is an unethical practice that will eventually end up with his supporters hurting someone. In a June 17, 2014 City Council meeting, a reportedly unemployed supporter of James Butts, this man, Stuart Bailey, think of him as kind of an Ethel Austin in training, threatened to keep another resident out of a council meeting by force just because Bailey said that the resident had insulted James Butts. And Butts didn't try to stop him or recess the meeting or eject him from making such threats, like he would have with people criticizing him or his allies.
If you vote for Padilla, you got a dirty cop coming. From Santa Monica, his brother was pervert on the Santa Monica Pier, swept under there. Also, Mike Stevens. We don't want you to city, hate your guts.
You've done this, Austin.
Now, mental illness is a serious subject, and it is not the intent of any part of this documentary to criticize someone because they may have a mental illness. However, it is the point of this documentary to point out that James Butts promotes bigotry and violence in council meetings for his own benefit. So we will not avoid criticizing James Butts for exploiting someone to make racially motivated threats of violence just because that person might have a mental illness. In fact, we want to highlight that James Butts is aware that he is allowing people with questionable mentalities to engage in acts that threaten public safety. And that in fact James Butts' own documented history indicates that he himself is ruthless and dangerously violent. So as we'll see in a second, James Butts' henchman, Stuart Bailey, publicly threatened to use illegal force to keep a critic of James Butts out of the city council meeting, violating their civil rights, using the excuse that the critic had insulted James Butts. But why did Bailey think an insult allowed him to break the law and violate civil rights?
That's just the way I am. I'm sick.
Now those are Mr. Bailey's words, not mine. But why specifically did Mr. Bailey feel compelled to commit a crime over what he perceived was an insult against James Butts?
Maybe there's a conspiracy going on in the city of Inglewood. Maybe there's somebody going around trying to start a racial war in this city.
Again, these are Stuart Bailey's beliefs. So what would make him threaten to use illegal force to keep another resident out of a council meeting just because he thought the resident insulted James Butts?
Now this is a black man. He is a black man. I am a black man. You insult him, you insult me as well.
Ignorancy.
Remember, bigotry is a sickness, and
I'm sick.
And this is how James Butts promotes bigotry and racial division in city council meetings. James Butts knows that what Bailey is saying is ridiculous, that if you're black you can criticize James Butts, as many black residents do, but if you're not black you can't criticize him. And if you do, another black person, say Bailey, has the right to assault you.
Ignorancy.
Everyone knows that that's just wrong for anyone to do, no matter what race they are. But in Stuart Bailey's troubled mind, it's all right for a person who's the same race as him to criticize Mayor Butts. But if the person isn't of the same race, then it's all right for Bailey to assault and violate that person's civil rights. That is by no means the opinion of the average Inglewood resident, but because James Butts gives Bailey and all his shills so much clout and support in meetings, it gives the illusion that it is, and that what his shills do is the norm. And that's how James Butts promotes violence, bigotry, and civil rights violations in Inglewood City Council meetings. Now, you may never again hear me say that Willie AG ever said anything that was important enough to remember. But as we go into the next chapter of the video, I think it's very important for all of us to remember this.
You don't have to be white to be a bigot. You can be a bigot and be black, brown, or any other color.
Now, we got off track again, but let's get back to that meeting where Stuart Bailey threatened another resident with violence. Now, I would usually tell people that if they wanted to see this for themselves, they would go to the City of Inglewood's website, go to their YouTube channel, and go to the June 17th, 2014 City Council meeting. However, if you go there, you will notice that the June 17th, 2014 City Council meeting has been removed from the list of videos that are accessible to the public. Now, you may think that maybe they never had a meeting, or maybe they never had the video up. No. You see, luckily, before the City Council decided to hide that meeting from the public, I videotaped the part where James Butts allowed his supporter to threaten someone with bodily harm and violation of their civil rights, just because Bailey said that the man had insulted the mayor. And here it is.
Mr. Texera will be talked to as of next Tuesday, our evening meeting. I will be waiting downstairs to ask him what his intentions are in this chambers. If he will be respectful, he will be allowed to come up. If not, he will be forcibly removed by me.
Ignorancy.
And getting back to the law, Penal Code 422.55 defines a hate crime as any criminal act, including keeping someone out of a council meeting by force, that is committed due to, among other things, someone's race or ethnicity. And Bailey made it very clear he thinks this is all about race and ethnicity.
Now this is a black man. He is a black man. I am a black man. You insult him, you insult me as well.
Ignorancy.
And logic and common sense indicates that if you plan to forcibly keep someone out of a council meeting, you know that you are going to injure them in some way. And Penal Code 240 defines the crime of assault as an unlawful attempt coupled with a present ability to commit a violent injury on another person. You don't even have to actually hurt someone, you just have to try to hurt them. And lastly, logic and common sense also makes it obvious that if you try to keep someone out of a council meeting by using force, you may be starting a fight. And Penal Code 415 states that it is a crime to fight in a public place or even to challenge someone to fight in a public place. And as we'll see later, this is something that Stuart Bailey definitely did. Now, James Butts loves to brag that he was in law enforcement for 30 years, so he should know that it's a crime to try to intimidate someone out of engaging in a civil right. And he knows that it's a crime to assault someone. And even with Bailey's limited verbal skills, he made it very clear what he was threatening to do: use force to keep someone out of a council meeting. But even though the council meeting rules say that you can be ejected for using threatening language, and even though Butts later admitted that what Bailey was threatening to do was illegal, James Butts did not eject Bailey from that meeting. And sadly, what Stuart Bailey probably gets from being James Butts' shill is that even though he has no education, no car, no job, and has nothing better to do than stand on the corner and pretend he's directing traffic, when he makes threats or even breaks the law for the mayor, maybe he feels like he's an important man. And what's even sadder, disgusting really, is that James Butts has absolutely no problem with callously exploiting that kind of person, no matter what risks that poses to Mr. Bailey or the public.
Who does that? Who does that?
So let's get back to that missing video where Bailey made his threat of violence. If you go to the City of Inglewood's website, it appears like there was never any June 17, 2014 meeting. However, here we see that there was and threats were made. Now, if anyone's thinking, yeah, it was really wrong for the mayor to let someone threaten another citizen with bodily harm and threaten to violate their civil rights in a city council meeting, but James Butts and the city council would never blatantly hide that video from the public. Maybe the video we just saw was dated June 17, 2014, but it was incorrectly labeled. Maybe there was no meeting on June 17, 2014, and James Butts let his shill make those threats in another meeting. Well, unfortunately for Butts, that's not possible, because here is the city's list of meeting minutes for 2014, and here's the listing for the minutes for the June 17, 2014 meeting. And here are the actual minutes to the June 17, 2014 meeting. And what you're about to see demonstrates why videos like the one you're watching now are so important. Not only did the Inglewood City Council remove a video from their website that proved that one of James Butts' dangerous shills threatened violence and civil rights violations against a critic of his, but the Inglewood City Clerk also erased any evidence whatsoever that the mayor's shill ever made those threats or was even in that meeting. Not coincidentally, even though we just saw Stuart Bailey speaking at the June 17, 2014 meeting, making threats of committing violence and denying someone access to the next meeting, the city clerk omitted Bailey's comments from the minutes, as if he was never there and as if James Butts never let him threaten someone with violence and denial of their constitutional right to attend a city council meeting. So, we've already seen how James Butts and his council can make one internet video disappear, and we've already seen how Inglewood City Clerk can make someone's threatening comments and their name disappear from the official minutes for the city council meetings. However, please understand that what I've just shown you is not out of the ordinary for James Butts and the other city officials in Inglewood. As we will see examples of shortly, it is shockingly commonplace. James Butts and his council have not only removed complete videos from the internet because they had embarrassing or incriminating content, but they have literally removed dozens and dozens of complete comments by citizens from meeting videos. And all these unethical and possibly illegal acts were carried out by Butts and others to hide things that were embarrassing or incriminating. And the city clerk has either removed, omitted, or changed completely literally hundreds of citizens' public comments from the official meeting minutes. That's why it shouldn't be a surprise that if the mayor, council, and city clerk would blatantly hide one instance where a disturbed supporter of the mayor made one threat,
he will be forcibly removed by me.
Then it shouldn't be surprising to anyone that James Butts and the council would deliberately hide other videos from the public that showed that Mayor James Butts had previously and repeatedly promoted these types of violent and even bigoted comments from his obviously dangerous shill, Stuart Bailey. Here's one example of James Butts promoting violence between residents that you still can find on the city's website.
Now, if you have a problem with somebody, do like men do. We go outside, downstairs, and we talk about it. And if you should happen to want to have a little fisticuffs, well then, that's just the way it goes. That's just the way it goes. That's just the way it goes. Well then that's just the way it goes.
Ignorancy.
And as you can probably guess by now, James Butts did not stop the speaker or even criticize his violent comments after he spoke or even later in the meeting. Remember, the LA County DA said that James Butts repeatedly violated state law and the United States Constitution by repeatedly ejecting a speaker who was just criticizing him with the facts. What does it say about a mayor who literally ejects a speaker from a meeting for just criticizing him, but doesn't say a word when a speaker promotes illegal and violent acts outside a city council meeting? Again, what does it say about an elected official who says nothing when someone speaking in a city council meeting promotes fighting outside a city council meeting, but then immediately interrupts someone just because they criticize a political ally of theirs?
You know, they might be, but Charles Bragg's the worst thing on this earth. I don't think you even want to put him.
You shouldn't be attacking Miss.
I know him.
Well, I thought what you can't attack people. 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 What you can't attack people.
So we see James Butts has the words to use, but wouldn't it be great if, as mayor of Inglewood, he used those words when he was supposed to use them?
Okay, now, if you have a problem with somebody, do like men do. We go outside, downstairs, and we talk about it. And if you should happen to want to have a little fisticuffs, well then, that's just the way it goes.
Mr. Bailey, but you can't attack people.
What does it say about James Butts when he uses his power to stop people who insult he or his friends, but he does nothing when someone threatens to assault his critics? It means that James Butts cares more about himself than he cares about the rules, the law, or public safety. And James Butts, the chairman of the city council, never criticized the statement of one of his council flunkies, George Dotson, when Dotson doubled down on Bailey's suggestion that if a resident had a problem with another resident, they should both go outside and duke it out. When Dotson said that if a resident had a problem with a council member, they should both go outside and duke it out.
Now, if you have a personal fight or some personal vendetta with one of us, be a man and take care of it outside. This is not the place to do that.
Yes, he really did just say that. And not saying anything when one of his council members say they are willing to fight members of the public is another way James Butts promotes violence in city council meetings. Let's say that a resident wants to exercise his constitutional right to complain at an Inglewood City Council meeting. But when they go to the meeting, they see that if you say something the mayor doesn't like, not only could the mayor illegally eject you from the meeting just for talking, but he will let his supporters yell at, abuse, threaten, and even assault you, back you down hallways, etc. And at least one other councilman in the meeting says he's willing to fight you outside City Hall. And if all that causes you any fear for your safety, or if someone breaks the law, the Inglewood police do nothing. Oh, and if you thought I was joking about IPD avoiding criminal investigations, listen to an IPD officer outright refuse to accept a written complaint of a hate crime under Penal Code 422.55, Penal Code 422.6, and Penal Code 240.
Second, I just cited you right here where it says any person that does anything to inhibit anybody else's ability to engage in their life, basically, because of race, creed, color. That's not civil. That's a criminal matter.
This is not a criminal matter.
Okay, what's your name? Okay, thank you. So you're refusing to accept this?
Now, some might say that the officer must have had a legal reason not to accept the complaint, because if he didn't, he could get in big trouble. But I have filed at least 3 complaints against at least 5 IPD officers, including this one for assault about 4 years ago, and IPD has refused, apparently illegally, to respond to any of them. And neither Butts nor IPD can say they didn't know that this 4-year-old complaint was being ignored, because I reminded them a year and a half after filing it. Over 2.5 years ago.
So I contacted the district attorney. They told me that IPD lied to me, that they had to accept the complaint. So I went back and had the watch commander accept the complaint. But no one has contacted me about that complaint in more than a year.
Now, if you want to see and hear more detailed evidence that IPD refuses to investigate crimes by both citizens and officers, Google the YouTube video, IPD refuses to investigate crimes by citizens and officers. But for now, just know that there is strong evidence that IPD condones and hides misconduct by its officers. And there is strong evidence in videos of council meetings on the city's own website that James Butts condones violent and threatening behavior by his shills. However, take a guess about if this July 14th, 2015 council meeting is still available, especially since James Butts allows Mr. Bailey to blatantly say that only black people should be allowed to criticize the mayor.
Leave the mayor alone. If you wanted his job, you file papers and run for his position. You're not black in a black city.
Those that guessed that that video is long gone were correct. And that missing July 14th, 2015 meeting video just happens to be the same meeting video that showed, as we saw earlier, that James Butts and the council refused to answer the question about what this $346 payment to Ethel Austin was all about. No matter how or where you look for that video on the city's website, you will not find it. It doesn't matter whether you stay on the City of Inglewood's website and look for the list of available city council videos for 2015, or if you go from the City of Inglewood's website to the city's YouTube channel and look at the list of city council videos for 2015 available there. You will not find that July 14th, 2015 city council meeting where an unscrupulous James Butts stays quiet and helps his dangerous, deranged, bigoted shill try to silence free speech and violate civil rights by saying that only people of a certain race should be allowed to criticize James Butts.
You're not black in a black city.
Mr. Bailey's statement both exposes him as a bigot and supports the theory that bigotry is born from ignorance. You see, Mr. Bailey says that Inglewood is a black city, but he is apparently ignorant to the fact that that is false, and that has been false for quite some time. Now, what percentage of what race lives in Inglewood should be irrelevant. But just to point out Mr. Bailey's ignorance and point out James Butts' willingness to help Bailey spread his ignorance in a city council meeting, just because Bailey was defending him, it has to be pointed out that no one racial or ethnic group in Inglewood far outnumbers all the others. And if we want to get technical, the 2010 census showed that Inglewood's black or African American residents comprise 43.9% of the city, and Hispanic or Latino residents made up about 50.6% of the city, with about 6% of the residents being primarily white, Asian, and mixed-race residents. And other statistics show that black and Hispanics have each been about half of Inglewood's residents since as far back as the year 2000. Again, what percentage of what people live in Inglewood should be irrelevant in people's daily lives. But when you're a bigot like Mr. Bailey, you delude yourself into thinking that the world, or your city, looks the way you want it to look, instead of seeing the world the way it really is, and who people really are, judging them, as Martin Luther King said, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So again, to be clear, the behaviors and apparent beliefs of Stuart Bailey and Butts' other shills do not represent the average resident of the city of Inglewood, where I've lived for 50 years. These are only D and F grade political operatives, some who may have some mental challenges and who, for money, position, and or a sense of belonging, are willing to do and say what they know others want them to do or say, even if those things are unethical, immoral, or illegal. Now, James Butts is famous for regularly and even illegally interrupting speakers when he's got something to say. And I don't mean interrupting a speaker who's violating a meeting rule. I'm talking about interrupting a speaker just to disagree with them, or lie about what they're talking about, or lie about them, or just to annoy and harass the speaker to distract them and the public from what the speaker is saying. Here are a few examples.
Now, the outstanding debt at this point until June 30th, 2014 is $131,335,992.
Cutting it down from that billion, then that's good.
But it's there. You're the chairman of the committee, so you should know what you're paying.
But anyway, one of the dirty tricks was Inglewood today, and you said that you weren't going to give them any money. You told us that. And I'm just wondering, how come I have this California Form 460 that says that the Inglewood today is a CNS, a campaign consultant. So our city is paying, our taxpayers are paying for the, see, there you go. You need to be quiet because you told me I can't interrupt you.
That's not taxpayer money.
Sure it is.
It is not.
Who? Oh, you got to be kidding.
You need to let him speak, Mayor,
Please,
uninterrupted.
I wanted to say about the taxpayer fund. Go ahead. Source of
Yeah, well, the thing is, are you going to let me talk?
I said, go ahead.
Yeah, but I can't interrupt you when you do your 5 minute and you just walk all over yourself. But anyway.
And Butts even interrupts speakers just to tell them off. After he turns off the cameras, of course.
Mr. Mayor, last meeting, you said that I accused you of being Nixon.
Mr. Bailey, hold on. Recess for a second. Mr. Bailey, I'm going to tell you something right now. We don't...
You couldn't get rid of them until December when the contract ran out.
Until January.
January, whatever it was. But, you did. And I don't know if it was because of...
It expired January of this year. The contract expired.
Oh.
It expired.
Okay. But, listen, we have been asking you to do it, and you never did it, but all of a sudden you did do it.
Because we had a
contract. I'm not. Stop my time. Thank you, Mr. Paco.
And James Butts keeps interrupting the speaker, even though the speaker was not being abusive, loud, threatening, profane, or violating any rules. And remember, in this video, you are only seeing a dozen or so of the hundreds of times James Butts has illegally interrupted speakers in city council meetings. So what do you call a mayor that loudly condemns those who interrupt people when they're speaking?
But now look at us with this mayor council.
Ma'am, if you want to talk, please go out in the hallway. It's not right for you to interrupt people.
But also loudly interrupts people when they're speaking.
You never did it, but all of a sudden you did do it.
Because we had a
contract. Stop my time.
You call him a hypocrite. So interrupting speakers is another way that James Butts promotes violations of civil rights in city council meetings. So although James Butts couldn't have stopped Bailey from making his bigoted comment, and Stuart Bailey has the constitutional right to show how ignorant and bigoted he is in a city council meeting, one thing is clear. It's pretty telling of James Butts' unethical and immoral personality that he will violate meeting rules and a speaker's civil rights by repeatedly interrupting them to argue about when a contract expired or protect himself or his allies, but he will stay completely quiet when his shills make loud, abusive, profane, threatening, and in this case, bigoted comments. Now, here's the point of the segment on Stuart Bailey. There are hundreds of examples spanning 5 years of James Butts blatantly interrupting speakers during their time to speak. We have seen that James Butts will break the law in a way that everybody can tell he's breaking the law to keep somebody from saying what he doesn't want them to say. But he didn't interrupt Stuart Bailey, even when Bailey made threatening, illegally threatening, and even bigoted comments in a city council meeting. And not only does James Butts stay completely quiet when Bailey makes his inappropriate comment, but when an audience member points out that Bailey's comment was inappropriate, Butts attacks the audience member for condemning Bailey's inappropriate comment, something Butts should have done.
You're not black in a black city. You'll never win.
Hey, Mr. Texera, would you not interrupt?
Oh, by all means, James, never interrupt the bigot. And listen to James Butts prove again what kind of pathological liar he is when he tells the audience member that he shouldn't interrupt anyone because no one ever interrupts him, even though Butts had not only allowed his shills to repeatedly interrupt him, but in fact the LA County DA told Butts that he himself violated the law and civil rights when he himself interrupted him.
You're black, you're not black in a black city. You'll never win.
Hey, Mr. Texera, would you not interrupt? No one interrupts you no matter what you say.
Let's look back.
Or illegal acts, Butts never tells the public that any of them are threats to public safety. Profanity and use bigoted slurs to attack not only me, but Butts and other critics. The reason he's being shot at, unquote. This is that officer.
Sergeant Marks, your time is up, Mr. Texera. Take it.
No, actually, he has 35
We're in recess.
seconds.
Recess. Sergeant Arms, remove him.
So again, James Butts lies. Now, to be fair, the audience member should not have interrupted Bailey or used profanity. But if you're going to break a rule, there aren't many better times to do it than opposing bigotry in your city's council meeting. And then, after Bailey's bigoted comments causes the resident to leave the meeting in disgust, and after Stuart Bailey leaves the podium and follows that resident outside the council chambers making threats of violence, James Butts doesn't criticize Mr. Bailey, let alone telling the Sergeant of Arms to go restrain Mr. Bailey. No, all James Butts does is to again stay quiet and say,
Well.
So let's slow down and digest what James Butts just did, or rather what he didn't do. It's James Butts' job as council chairman to keep order in the meetings, to protect the public. However, even though Butts knew that Bailey had said that he thought it was all right to fight at City Hall, and had said that he was going to use force against another resident, and that he was now following someone out of the meeting loudly challenging them to fight, James Butts does absolutely nothing except say, well. Let's listen again to see how out of control the situation was. And please listen to what Stuart Bailey is saying.
Yeah? How big is Where you going? What? How big is my baby? Where you go?
Well.
I'm back to my comments.
James Butts is a mayor in a council meeting, watching a man he knows has made violent threats and who he knows may be mentally ill follow someone out of a council meeting yelling and trying to start a fight. And Butts does absolutely nothing. And Butts does absolutely nothing because the man trying to start a fight is one of his shills. And one of his shills getting into a fight with one of his critics would be fine with James Butts, because his critic would go to jail, and that could be used to silence his critic. And that's how James Butts promotes violence in city council meetings.
Who does that? Who does that?
Now, we've seen Willie AG harass someone outside City Hall. We've seen Willie AG physically and verbally threaten someone outside a city council meeting. We've seen Ethel Austin belittle and curse at an 80-year-old man in a council meeting.
Old damn fool.
We've also seen her come completely unglued in one city council meeting, twice, and in another council meeting, we've seen her imply that either she or someone else might hurt a resident if that resident kept coming to council meetings.
Blow that man out before somebody hurt that man.
And we've seen Stuart Bailey promote fighting outside council meetings, threaten to commit assault outside council meetings,
If not, he will be forcibly removed by me.
and try to start a fight inside a council meeting.
Where you go?
And we've seen James Butts engage in all sorts of unethical, if not illegal, actions to support all of them. But if you want to see James Butts go even lower, to the very depths of hypocritical abuse of power, by initiating a police investigation against someone you might never expect, Google the YouTube video, Mayor James Butts uses IPD to hide his misconduct. So back to Bailey the bigot. As we saw, James Butts did nothing to try to stop Bailey from leaving the podium to try to start a fight. And unlike what Butts would do for the average resident, and especially for his critics, Butts actually reserves the podium for Bailey until he returns from trying to start a fight.
Well, back to my comments. Oh,
Go ahead, we'll watch you back.
Thank you.
We'll wind you back? That's right. James Butts just gave Stuart Bailey extra time to speak because Bailey left the podium because he wanted to try to start a fight. So not only does James Butts, who usually can't resist interrupting people, sit quietly during Bailey's ignorant and bigoted remarks, but then Butts gets mad at another resident for criticizing Bailey's ignorant and bigoted remarks. And then when Bailey leaves the podium to try to start a fight with someone that Bailey had publicly threatened to forcibly remove from a meeting, Butts still doesn't try to stop Bailey, or tell the sergeant of arms to stop Bailey. Butts doesn't even criticize Bailey for trying to start a fight in a city council meeting. Instead, James Butts waits patiently for Bailey to return from trying to start a fight, gives him extra time to speak, and then quietly watches the high five for bigotry between Willie AG and Stuart Bailey that Butts not only condoned, but promoted. And that's how James Butts promotes bigotry in Inglewood City Council meetings. However, demonstrating the kind of dishonest, manipulative, and hypocritical individual James Butts is, watch him throw Stuart Bailey under the bus at the next meeting. That's right. The next week, a full 7 days later, James Butts hypocritically criticizes Bailey's bigoted comments and tries to convince the public that he was devastated by Bailey's bigoted comments.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Bailey. One thing though, last week you made in your comments, you commented and you mentioned, race and holding office, and I just have to tell everybody that bothered me.
Really, James? That's the story you're going with. Because if it bothered you so much, James, why didn't you say something last week? Why didn't you interrupt Bailey like you regularly do with other speakers? Or why didn't you say something right after Bailey spoke? Or right after public comments? Or at the end of the meeting, when you get 5 minutes, which you regularly stretch to 10 minutes or more, to talk about whatever you want? Did it take you a whole week to figure out that bigotry is bad? Or did someone pull you to the side and explain to you how you might have ruined your political career by promoting and defending bigotry, showing everyone that you are so egotistical and insecure that you'd rather have one bigoted shill defending you in meetings than to have one less shill defending you in meetings? And wouldn't you know it, it turns out that the video where Butts stays quiet during Bailey's bigoted comments and criticizes a resident for fervently condemning Bailey's bigoted comments, and where James Butts gives Bailey extra time to finish his bigoted comments, that video is long gone. It's been removed from the city's website. But the video a full week later, where James Butts is hypocritically condemning Bailey's bigoted comments and promoting equal rights for all, that video is still available to the public. And James Butts doesn't just allow people to make racist or stereotypical comments in public, he actually does it himself. In fact, at a funeral I attended for a family friend of 45 years, the mayor made a presentation to the family, and he prepared for this presentation by actually telling a racist joke to the hundreds of grieving attendees. And to the credit of every single person there was dead silence. To the point where James Butts had to say pathetically, that was a joke. James Butts, the lying, hypocritical, civil rights violating, and violence and bigotry promoting mayor.